I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on to item B1, we will now begin. We'll have a little discussion time. We have about 30 minutes to get through this. There's some information that Gina has to share with the board. And then we have some guests that we'd like to ask some questions about. And we'll introduce the guests here in a second. But Gina, could you start with the information that you had sent?
Do we need translation?
I don't think we need translation.
Okay,
Sorry, thanks for the heads up. Do we have
So what am I?
on the football fields?
So I'm doing a recap from the last board
Yes.
workshop or just the?
The recap and then
Oh.
the email that was sent to the board.
Okay. So the last board workshop on November 9th, one of the items we discussed was some project budgets. So preliminary costs put together by Architects West for the replacement of the high school football field with grass compared to if we did a turf field. So, and through the discussion, because the prices were higher than what some board members believed was could be done. There was discussion that meeting of a workshop at some point. There was not a date set until the following Monday, which was the board meeting. After that workshop, I actually came back and I left that board workshop thinking I needed to do some more homework to see if this is something that the district could do without the guidance or without bringing in a contractor and architects. And so Orland had set up a meeting with Brad and Nathan for the 28th of November.
And who's Brad?
Brad Phillips.
Desert Sun.
Sun Landscaping, excuse me. So he's a vendor or a
He would be the
entity.
general
Right.
contract.
So basically we did some additional homework in the process and with the intent to share that with the board, either at this workshop or even share it ahead of time to even determine if there was a need for a workshop. That was why the email went out last week, was to let you know what had additional information that had been learned over the course of between the last workshop and this one, to see if there was still that need, and here we are.
And I believe the board was able to read that as well. Is there any questions?
So we don't really have any, we don't know if how far the numbers were off or how much we can save by going direct yet.
Well, no, I just got some pricing in late today. I haven't compared it, but I do know Architects West, they had quite a bit in there for putting a whole new irrigation system in. They did have some removal of whatever could be in the center, old foundation. And I think from a conversation with Nathan and Brad, there was a potential of a higher cost included for the shipping in of a high grade sand that isn't necessarily something we would need to have. Is that kind of what
Yeah,
we're talking about? So
everybody who bid on it contacted me because they were all customers of mine. But Bernhardt, who's the one that did the bid for Bernhardt Golf out of Portland, Oregon, is Daryl called me up, and they were trying to figure out shipment to bring in this. They were going to bring in Columbia River sand, I believe, out of Portland, which is about the most expensive sand you can buy in the Northwest. Ship it in, rail in Dakota Pete from North Dakota, and then he was wanting to know if I could bucket mix it for him. And I didn't know when I was going through all this, I didn't know it was for you guys because I already done another price for another guy, and I think a lot of that was probably that, and then he had a pretty extensive drainage system in.
Yeah. So I think
Alongside the state.
Yeah. So they were going, Architects West, I think, was going on the very high end, the highest quality, whether or not it was necessary. So I think those were the things that contributed to the price being quite a bit up there. So, but again, I haven't looked at the documentation Orland provided today.
So Orland has some bids back now.
yeah, he's provided, he forwarded them up to me late this afternoon. I just was in the middle of some other things. So we'll look at those and
Any other questions for Gina?
I just want to back up just a little bit here. What's the purpose of tonight? What are we trying to accomplish?
Well, according to the minutes that I read at our last November 9th workshop, we wanted to invite a couple of guests, and I believe one of them is here, to ask some questions regarding the football field and the costs and vendor prices. That's the last I recall, according to the minutes.
Yeah, I don't think we were going to talk about maybe vendor prices per se, but talk about overall costs versus sod versus turf.
Right.
Okay, I know we wanted to talk about it and maybe also time frame. Are we talking a 3-month time frame to do this? Are we talking 6 months? Are we talking a year?
Gina's
That
last
was-
email that she sent said, from the last board meeting, they were saying it was gonna impact spring or fall sports. My interpretation of your email was it won't.
No, 'cause- So when I came to the board workshop on the 9th, I presented what I knew at that time based on bringing in Architects West, the people that are more of an expert than I am with this type of thing. So recalibrating on the 10th and having a meeting with Nathan and Brad, and they can get it done in 3 to 4 weeks. So, which would allow us to play on it in August. So I didn't know what I didn't know on the 9th, the November 9th meeting. Additional research is brought to the surface that it's, much more doable in a time frame that doesn't impact sports. And so,
Minimal damage to the track, we're thinking.
None.
yeah, I think
None.
they'd overlay.
I don't want to repair it.
Right.
No, I mean, we were,
You can overlay it, do the grade and everything with that.
yeah,
Messing it up.
yeah.
So what's the difference between what's Desert Sod do as compared to Nathan?
Desert,
I'm-
you're the
I'm
grass,
I
right?
just do the grass and then a lot of the equipment, like the finish graders, the laser graders. We supply that for pretty much everybody who gave you a bid.
Mhm.
I think there's 4 companies that were.
You
4 or 5.
contracted for.
There's 4 of them, and so basically they're all customers of mine. So I'm neutral. I don't care.
Right.
I mean, here's sand-based sod. We have a dwarf type that we'd recommend for this area. And we do sand-based sports fields. And then we work with our contractors, I'd be on the laser grader helping them, I'd be moving equipment out, but we're basically, one of my install crews would come in and probably lay it for whoever gets it. I don't know who's price. Desert Sun is one of our customers. Same with Bernhardt and Uyghur and all the rest of them. So
So why do we need a general contractor?
I guess that's kind of what I was getting at.
It's not so much, it's just how they have their already work set up. He does what he does. He doesn't do the whole thing. So he's saying he does all the subgrade prep and prep for the sod. Somebody else does the sod. He doesn't do the sod. That's not what his line of work is.
no, I do this side.
You do the sod, they do the prepping.
Yeah, we just work together with whoever gets it,
So that's why there's a prime, a general, and a subcontractor.
But-
It's just how they do the work.
Basically, I'm not going to go get bonded. And I'm not going to bid against my 5 other customers and make them all mad at me. Otherwise, I would bid on it, but
So, like,
I'm not
Desert-
gonna.
Desert Sun is the general. It's not another general. It's
Yeah,
that-
it's going to be whether it's Desert
Bernhardt
Sun
or
or
Bernhardt.
Bernhardt Golf, whoever gets it is going to come out and they're going to say, all right, we want, this much sand delivered. We're going to, and they're going to bring out their dozers. We'll bring out our laser graders, our sand pros with our scrapers on the finish grade, our install machines, and we just work with them. Yeah. I don't bid because most of any job that goes to an architect, if I throw out a bid, all I'm doing is going to all my customers and say, hey, Get out of here. I
I'm
don't,
not direct.
don't buy from me next time, you know?
Right.
So
Gotcha.
we just work with them because it's our product and we want our product to not fail, so that's why we do that work with them, whether it's Rich Top or whoever gets it.
But that was one of the questions and it sounds like maybe it's been solved, is that the last workshop we were in, they were saying, somebody, maybe it was Don's perspective from Orland or something, was saying that we had to let that sod sit for quite a while before kids could play on it, or it wasn't going to take well. That's not a...
3 weeks is plenty. We do repairs, goal line stuff, 2 days before. We did repairs in the goal lines 2 days before Portland Timbers, but we did it with a different, we pressed it in, did a thick cut. A thin cut, which is our regular cut. If you got 2.5 weeks of growing weather, you're fine. We've had televised games 2.5 weeks after a thin cut install, and they held up great. About 8 days, they're shooting a root in. Sand on sand roots so fast that as long as somebody's paying attention to the water.
So if it's done right, how long should a field like that last before it has to be completely redone? From
Maintenance.
your opinion.
For my opinion,
If
all
it's
depends on the guy who's
maintained
taking care of it.
Yeah.
It can be, that's everybody says, I don't want a field to last for 20 years. Well, hire a guy and take care of it. And you got to give the field a rest. It all depends on how it's taken care of. You can do a bad job putting in a field, and if it's taken care of well, it can last forever. And if you do a great job, I've seen some of the most expensive fields that would blow your mind look like crap a year later, just because nobody's taking care of it. So
You've made a key statement though, that our fields are overused. There's not a rest time. for that field- for
pretty
that
much
field,
any
so.
school you go to or municipality, they're going to overuse their fields. You see it everywhere. Every day kids are on them year round, and every year more and more, which is part of having a nice field. But if you start off right and you do things, that's why you're seeing sand-based fields. That's why you're seeing architects spec out these massive drainage systems, because they want the field to have a chance, But now, over on the west side, they've been doing them, drainage systems. And now you got these 12, 15-year-old fields. They got a thatch layer 4 inches thick. And now they're tearing up and they're going, what the heck? Well, they're not maintaining them properly, And so now they're having to go back in and get rid of that thatch layer, whether it be phrase mow and reseed and slit seed and double, or just a resurface, taking that. They still got a great sand cap there. The base is there, surface work. And then you go to fields that are maintained right 10, 15 years later, and they're perfect. The best field maintained in the country is the VMAC, and they're redoing it after 8 years because they're just 8 inches too high because they put 8 inches of sand on it. They add an inch to it so that it's playing perfect all the time. And they're like, hey, we got to tear this out. Look at this field. And you're like, man, that's the most beautiful field in the world. You want that torn out? And like, yeah, we got to take 8 inches out of it. So there's really not and it depends on how particular you are. I would say you should be able to get 20 years out of it if you're maintaining it with doing small, minimal repairs out of it, you should be able to get more than that if you're going in and if you got an area out, go in there and phrase out, you're in between the hashes and phrase that out at 1 3/4 inches and spend the money and put 1 3/4 thick cut back in there where it's not going to tear up the second a kid gets on it. You can press it in, play on it tomorrow. Costs a little bit more. But it's going to pay for itself because you're going to have a brand new center of your field, that's going to be put in right.
How much is that field get used in the summertime?
I don't know that it gets used a lot because that's usually its opportunity to get a little bit healthy.
When does the soccer play?
And I've seen soccer
Men's
players
league.
play there in the summer, past years.
It hasn't been
We
leagues.
could-
It's
we
been
could-
It's like the
people that
championship.
rent
Yeah.
them. Yeah, like the Hispanic soccer
Right.
club or something like that. It's not like
Right.
kids.
No, it's city type stuff.
So it's not all day every day then.
No.
They have a couple of those big matches.
I would say it's kind of lightly used all summer long until football starts in August. Right?
But even that, I mean, it's not getting used all day during school, is it? I mean, it's not as bad as a municipal field that's
No.
getting
Yeah,
hammered.
It's just every day after school.
Yeah.
It's
Pretty consistent.
getting right now soccer and football at the same time, right?
Mhm.
Girls soccer and
About
football.
7 days a week, probably 3 or 4 or 5 hours a day. Yeah, you got
Football
it's
season's
also
just
right
now
now.
getting
Yeah,
over.
it's,
So
now
it's,
Roger uses it for practices too, or just for the
He
competition?
does. He does when he wants to work on spacing and kicks and special plays.
That's why we need 2 fields.
I
mhm.
agree. Well, soccer should have their own field.
But that's why we need 3.
Any other questions?
Well, that's sod, but are we gonna
Sod,
talk
yeah.
about turf?
So Don, I'll let you introduce your guests, and I think we have some questions as well.
Okay, this is Kent Anderson. He's the District 5. If you divide up our state into districts for WIAA, he runs District 5. He lives in Royal and had a lot to do with Royal's turf field that they were put in, 9 years ago, something like that. And he just got a lot of information. He volunteered to come and share with you, not to sway you in any particular, but to give you information and so he's here to do that.
I agree with everything that he said, but rather than how well the field is maintained, my experience is how much it's used is really, the state is able to hold state baseball for the 3A and the 4A at Safeco Field. And same day you could put more games in there. So it's like they're talking to Safeco, why can't we play the 2A and the 1A games there? Too much usage, and so they just strictly limit the amount of usage that you can have. Wenatchee spent $2 million, and not all of it, actually $2.5 million, and not all of it was on the field, but a large majority of it, probably over $1.5 million they spent putting in a grass field about 8 years ago. They now have turf. And they had to spend so much time, or they had to keep people off of it. They had they had a beautiful grass field. They wouldn't let anybody play on it. Snowed, nobody can play on it. Rain, nobody can play on it. And there's all these things you can't play on, can't play on it. And they just found that it made it so it was almost not usable. And they had drainage systems in it. They had sand. They had done everything to that field to make it the best grass field possible. And like I said, they've gone to turf. One of the things that the state's doing now, and it's, right now it's on the west side and it's creeping over here to the east side because there's more turf fields over here now. Any playoff game on the west side is on turf, period. No exceptions, it's on turf. And over here now, we've kind of had a tradition on this side that you can host the first round of football playoffs. Everything else is on neutral field. Not so anymore. Royal hosted the first 2 rounds of the state because they have turf. And so they're taking a look. Richland wasn't able to play a single game this year on their home field. Richland has lots of money. They're probably going to run a bond to redo their Bomber Bowl is pretty old. But again, they put in new turf. They've tried to do things and you use it. They have Hanford and Richland High that uses it. You've got JV football, you got C football. They have separate soccer fields, but it just gets used and it gets beat up and it just can't hold up. And so they played all their playoff games were at Lamson this year in Kennewick. And there's 3 turf fields in the Tri-Cities now. There's Grandview, there's Zephyl and Yakima, there's Wenatchee, there's Moses Lake, there's Royal, there's Gonzaga Prep, and there's Albee. We also played a couple of games. There were some games played at Pullman, but WSU. But the playoff picture, if you're looking at the playoff picture, that's getting to be a consideration, because let's face it, by the end of the year, and we've had a great year. We've had probably the best fall you could have for turf fields, with the exception of the rain.
As I say, except the ones that don't drain.
Yeah, except for the rain. But
Yeah.
but even so, the ones
Mhm.
that drain,
Yeah.
it gets wet. They do get cut up. They do get tore up a little bit, and it, but they will heal because the weather's been there. But you know as well as I that we've had football, and you guys are in the playoffs almost every year. I mean, and I've been at Royal 39 years or 30 years, and we've been in the playoffs 29 years. So we go late in the season, and when you go late in the season and it gets cold and there's snow on your grass just dies. And it's not, Callahan had a sod farm out there. He would give us the sod free, and we would take the sod off. We'd have farmers come in. We would put a tarp over the track, put plywood over it, put a foot of dirt over the plywood and drive on it. Would remove the turf. We'd use a football team to lay the sod, and Callahan would give us the sod. We'd lay it. It'd last 2 years, and we didn't put the sand on it. We didn't. But the point is, it just gets it. To me, the big kicker is usage, and if you're going to use it, it's just really hard on it. Royal put their turf field in, and that includes curbing. That includes relocation of the pole vault pits and the high jump pits, and they had to move stuff off of there when they put it in, and they spent $400,000. But they did.
That was a few years ago, because I've priced out some lately.
Yeah, I was gonna
No,
say.
but
You wouldn't even touch the.
Well, no,
the-
but keep
They
in
did a ton
mind,
of it themselves.
we did it all
yeah,
ourselves.
exactly.
We
yeah.
did everything ourselves. We had the gravel donated. We
Yeah.
had everything, the people that put the curbing in, all donated. The concrete was donated.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely everything was donated. I'm just,
Yeah.
and I really think you could do it for around that now. I don't think it would be a whole lot more. I really don't. But you have to have the commitment from people to donate and do the work. We had a guy out there, retired farmer, that absolutely took charge, and if he needed the curbing done, he contacted the group, and we had the Hispanic community come in for the Hispanic soccer club, and they did all the work all the prep work for the curbing. We got another group to come in and do something else, and so the field out there now is used every weekend, all summer long. It's used for grade kid football. It's used for junior high football, high school football, boys soccer, girls soccer. 3 football teams, and every time you go out and play on it, it's exactly the same. It's ready to go. It doesn't
It
wear
always
out.
looks good.
It always looks good. It always looks good. And it's just ready to go. And I'm not saying that it's not more money, because it isn't. But if you're ever thinking of down the line, okay, we want to do this over here, we want to do this here, and we just don't want to spend the money on this field, I personally don't think it's worth spending. I think parts of it needs to be resodded, and you do it. And you're going to have to just do what you've been doing. You're going to have to limit the usage. You're going to probably, it'd be a good idea to find someplace somewhere in the city and make an agreement with the city and play soccer there, or do something and maybe have their playoff games there or something like that. But you're just going to have to limit the usage on it if you want to do it, because you can't use it as much as a high school uses it and expect it to hold up. It just won't. I've just seen too many fields. I've worked with too many schools that just, and you're right, Royal practice over the VMAC,
Well, and
and it's great,
yeah.
but how much does it get used?
It gets used every day.
Yeah, it gets used every day, but they're not playing football on it. They're practicing and they're running through patterns, and you know what I mean. They're not.
Oh, you should see it.
Yeah.
When they got them linemen out there, that
Yeah.
thing gets chewed up like crazy.
Yeah.
But their maintenance program
Yeah.
and the varieties. But the biggest thing is you're talking about these sand capped fields that were put with clay turf on top of. We redo them all the time. They ain't gonna hold up. I mean, that
Yeah.
Wenatchee field you're talking, I know exactly. They built it right. You know, but they didn't hire the outfit in Colorado to come up because at that time, 8 years ago, there was one outfit that had a sand-based product. And you put that clay on top of sand, guess what? You just whipped all the water right away to the top. That's going to fill quicker than any field in the country. So you're kind of giving that. I mean, I'm with you on artificial. If I had the money, I'd put artificial in. But if you put a sand-based field in the right way, that VMAX Center gets used way more than you have a clue. You go there, there's European soccer teams. Royal City's not the only team that gets to go practice there. Trust me.
No, I know. I'm just.
I go over there all the time because we're always constantly doing work over there. And the guy that runs it's one of my really good friends. You should see their schedule. They're redoing it, and you have 30 days to get it done. And that is February. It's year round. That thing is getting played on. And it's getting played with a lot of people. I mean, you go to their practices, there's 100 some players out there with cleats, plus all the coaching staff and media and traffic areas and families watching it. But they built the field right. So there is a deal about building the field right, because a field in Eastern Washington will handle a field better than Seattle will.
I'm sure it is, and we don't get the rain over here. You
Yeah.
know, we get about 7 inches a year, so we really don't need the drains. You know,
Yeah.
I think the sand is important. I think it's critical, but again, it's still usage. If you take a look at most of places that have sand, whether it's over at Indian Stadium in Spokane or wherever it is, they limit
Yeah.
what goes on there.
No, I agree with you. And
Ted-
Gonzaga's
Ted
one
did
that
tell me
really
the one thing
limits
he
their
wished
play.
is they would have
And
put
that's why the
drains in
fields
the
always
rails.
look good.
He told me that a couple.
Well, we had one. We
He
had
said he has
one.
to go pump it or something like that.
No, we had 1 year. We had 1 year where there's been water, and it was one of those years that just poured. And we could have put
That might
it.
have been the last time I talked to him. I can't remember why. I
Yeah,
talked to
we
him.
haven't. There hasn't been rain. There hasn't been any water out there for probably.
But I think Royal's in a pretty unique situation compared to most communities, because all communities I've dealt with, lots of them with little league fields and stuff, they're all going, oh, yeah, but this guy's going to do this, this guy's going to do this, and then when it comes time to do it, bring your laser grader out. Bring, Royal City has a coach that loves his football program, and he has a bunch of people that.
Well,
love
Ted
their
was
football
the guy. It's not the football coach. It was the guy.
Yeah, but
You know.
400,000 for an artificial field, I don't think you get the crumb rubber or I mean, I could talk to Premier just to get a base price, but even
Well,
if you got everything donated, I don't think you could build it for 400,000.
When we looked last time, the field itself was for something, right? Probably, remember? We priced it out if everybody did all the work. But
Oh,
just-
okay.
Just the field was like 400,000 2 years ago.
But that included no drainage system.
That was just the turf. It's 350 or 400 for just the turf.
And that's kind of what I'm talking about. And I don't know what you guys have available in your community. I don't know if you have somebody that would donate gravel or, I don't know what you have available, but I'm just saying, we did have that.
Yeah.
We had that. We had a guy, he did not use a laser grader. He didn't at all. And when they came to lay it, Field Turf didn't want to do it. They said, no, we can't have some
Farmer.
do this and come in and put our product on it. It's not going to work. And so they talked Atlas Track, because we did the same thing for our track. We did all the prep work. We did everything. And Atlas told them, they said, no, it's okay.
Don't worry.
And then when they came and did it, they go, nicest one we've ever done.
Well,
in
they,
fact, they're
they
not
had a
doing-
laser. They just didn't have a laser grader. They were shooting it.
Oh yeah, they
Yeah.
shoot it. Right. Yeah.
I mean, they were
They
shooting
shot
it.
it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But I'm saying they didn't have a laser grader or anything like that. They just tractor.
No, and you're right. I mean,
Safety of the turf, with the issues that have come up with concerns that might be tied into some of these cancers and like that.
You don't want me to answer that.
they're going
It's-
with different.
It's,
Different
it, but
sources,
it's, I mean, think about it. You're gonna breathe in rubber chunks like that big so you're gonna get cancer? No, it's not related. There's no correlation to that. It's just people trying to cause problems.
But they've already got an alternative source for it too.
Yeah.
I mean, they're already doing stuff with, what are all the different, there's a whole bunch of different stuff they're putting in there. The one that I thought was funny is they're using recycled Nikes.
Mhm.
Well, what's Nike shoes recycled? That's rubber.
No,
too,
that's
you
what-
know?
that's what
I'm
I-
like, if rubber's giving you.
That's what Atlas Track was using
Yeah,
to make
it's-
stuff for weight rooms and the padding.
But they've
That's-
got, what's that wood product they got? I don't know. They've got a couple different other alternatives too, because the only concern with that is, and I'm with you, I don't agree that they have the science there. I mean, I think it'd be great. We could put everything to real grass, but I don't think there's any, but the problem is the scare's there. And so with that scare, it doesn't matter if it's right. It doesn't matter. It's
It's
perception.
perceived, yeah.
How about
And
the
if you get,
injuries?
huh?
How about the injuries?
They're higher. They're way
I
higher.
would say that I don't think, we haven't seen it at all, but that doesn't mean that, maybe it is, but a grass field is softer, there's no question about it, but that's usually not where you're hurt. You're hurt from, when you're out here playing on your field and you're sinking in an inch and a half, and, that's not real safe either. So
Or you got a big divot because it
Yeah,
has, you got to wear, I mean, you're going to twist an
if you'd have
ankle.
gone over to Richlands Field and looked at it and saw, there was just little clumps left once, so there's all these divots and, that's where you turn ankles, where sprinklers are, those kind of things. Those are all issues too. And so,
As far as like the VMAX Center, just talking to those guys, their indoor facility never gets used. Those guys, the professional players, play on Sunday on artificial, but they don't practice unless it's been raining or just, they don't like it on their joints, but they're older and bigger. And, I haven't really heard much in the high school level. I'm with you. I think most high school fields, you're going to get more injuries because of crappy areas in your field. I mean, you got a 2-foot hole that.
My understanding is Lamson Stadium was built because kids were getting their legs broken on the grass field. That's what I was told.
I think
They had
it's
several years
used,
in a row.
used by 3 high schools for soccer, for football. It couldn't keep up. I mean, it literally couldn't keep up. And so when they put it in, Field Turf was just a fledgling company, and they put in, like, I won't say it was AstroTurf, but it was an AstroTurf-like product that didn't have a sand or a rubber fill. And they had it there for, 3 or 4 years, and then they pulled it out and they put in Field Turf. And there's no question that Field Turf isn't the best product out there. I think it is the best. But, when we were looking at putting in our field, there's other options out there. I mean, there's a lot of other options out there, and some of them are good products. There's 85 to 90% of all turf fields are made in one factory. There's like one little factory that makes a little teeny bit. So it's all made in the same place, and they're made to different specs and things like that, and the blades will be wider and the blades will be thinner, but it's basically the same product.
Like our potato field.
And we actually, by using another product, we could have saved another $100,000. And in my mind, it would have been just as good a product, because it would have been a rubber field, but it would not have been Field Turf.
So we got about 2 minutes. If any board members have any specific questions, then we have to move on to the next topic.
My only thing is, a couple of years ago, I don't know how many years ago, when
Wagner.
what Dale was trying to put together volunteers to do this artificial turf, and he couldn't make it go in the community. He couldn't get enough support. And,
Lots of people couldn't give me money. Lots of
That
people
was
will
the issue,
support.
is the balance, because the district wasn't kicking in. And I thought he said he had George Walker with gravel. and-
Walker would donate all the gravel and sand or whatever. And then he had enough contractors to bring in material. But still, there's a lot of other stuff that he didn't have donations for.
Yeah, we tried to get money and that was we couldn't come up with.
I'll tell you how Royals was funded. That doesn't mean that you could do the same thing, because I don't know that you could. Royal has another unique situation with their booster clubs. They have a hunting club, and that hunting club generates about 50 grand a year. But they got 150,000 from the school district. They had donations for, I think they got 150,000 from the booster club, and they got 100,000 by going out and soliciting. And so that's how they paid for theirs. The booster club they actually had to get a loan because they didn't have that, because they had been spending their money. And so they made it so they paid off, like, I can't remember what, 25,000 a year or whatever. And it's, all paid off now and everything, but that's how they did it. But they had a good source, a good reliable source of income that they were able to do that. But the district only put 150,000 in.
I got a question. How's that field holding up? Is it still just as good?
It's just like us.
That's what I've always wondered, because people
just-
say,
it's
in
just-
9 years you got to replace it. And it's like,
Is it 9 or 8? I can't remember now. I'm getting too old, but it's just like it's new. I mean, if you were to go out there right now, it would look a little dark, and you say, oh, it's, but what it is you have to brush it once in a while. You have to, and so once a year they come in and have a guy that comes in. Yeah, and brush it and vacuum it and then put it down and clean it, and then it looks just like a new field again. So, Grandview, they actually bought a machine to do it, but it doesn't do it as well. It's just kind of a hand thing that they do with. But yeah, it's, and because if you don't, I think Grandview spent probably 850 to 900,000 on theirs. They did some bleachers, they did a few other things, but generally they spent, if you have it contracted out, that's, you have the contractor and all that kind of stuff. We had none of that. We had zero.
yeah, that seems still pretty cheap. And because a lot of times we're in doing the practice field and I see the whole bid, and like at colleges or something like that. I mean, I've seen them up to 1.5 million for
Oh, yeah.
for turf field, artificial turf field. So, matter of fact, I just did one over there. They're doing the infield. We're doing the outfield and real grass. They're doing an artificial infield. And that's like 190,000 for Premier, which is Field Turf's main builder.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're in the infield.
No, I'm telling you,
How can you spend that much money?
that's where the money
Is it
that's where
gold laced or what?
That's where the money goes.
I know where we can buy some used stuff. Up in Spokane.
Yeah,
I've heard
it's
that.
sitting alongside the
Yeah.
freeway.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah. That's the old. It's not field turf. That's the old turf that was in Alvin.
I thought that also came out of Cheney before they put their red.
I don't know. I heard it came out of Alvin, but it could be both. It could be some guy that's grabbed it both. I don't know.
Yeah, and in my personal opinion is obviously the fake turf's better. I mean, you go look at it, it's unbelievable. But I also think in Eastern Washington, if the field's done right, now you guys don't have as much traffic as like West Richland's, municipal parks. I mean, those places get hit all day, every day, something scheduled till 10 o'clock. Same with Wenatchee, Walla Point. I mean, that thing is scheduled from 7 in the morning until 10:30. You don't have that kind of traffic. I think if you got in a good maintenance program, you could have a good field. Will it be as good as an artificial? No, but I think you could do a good field.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. We need to move on.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you guys.
Thank
All
you.
right, see ya.
Yep.
Thank you.
Moving on to item C1. Capital levies. Project.
And then I have Don stick around. Maybe.
What's up?
So anyway, a couple weeks ago, we were at our
Oh.
school board conference, and Rob did a lot of work trying to get an idea down for us that I thought made a lot of sense. Obviously, it requires that the board make a decision very soon. And so, Rob, if you want to explain what was sent.
Well, I guess it's pretty much all in here. Did everyone get a chance to read so this was, we talked about it briefly when we were doing our recap after the WASDA conference, and I just said I would put it all down in writing. Some of these numbers are speculative based on numbers that we got from bond counsel, Piper Jaffray. There was that information that Gina brought in. And so I just kind of filled in those numbers to come up with projections. And then in my mind, I was trying to think, okay, what are the pros, what are the cons of this? And so I just listed them, and I'm sure people can come up with more pros and cons either way. But this is just kind of a synopsis of what that idea was that was being thrown around.
So where did you pull the money? Where did you pull the 5 million from?
So on that one, in one of the documents, when there was speculation on the 3 phases of a possible new high school and what those costs would be, the first number I remember that bond would increase the taxpayer $1.97, and so I looked then based on our current valuation, how much of a bond would come up to about that $1.97 area. So 5 million would bring it up $1.91.
How much of a levy?
How much a levy? Yes, would bring up $1.91. 2.5 million a year would be about $1.91. Again, those are obviously not hard numbers. That was just based on what our expected valuation is going to be next year, based on Mark Pressing's. Is it Pressing or Prusing? Pressing. His numbers. So that whole idea with that was that if you go to the public and ask for the levy, and they're comfortable with that much of an increase, then it kind of gives you a look ahead to where would they become comfortable maintaining that kind of a tax increase into a bond. So you could pretty much do it any way you wanted, though.
Well, are you thinking though that we do the grass and then go into the levy to build a stadium?
Sports complex, yeah.
Sorry,
at the
sports
new
complex.
Yeah,
facility.
I don't think I was even trying to put any thought into what I think we should do with the current field. It was mainly just looking at, there's a couple of reasons for this. One of it was, and I listed some of the pros, you kind of gauge where your community's at as far as their comfort with paying more taxes. But also you would take 5 million out of the debt capacity, which we already know is going to be pretty tight based on our current bond recommendations, which I'm a little concerned that they're pretty conservative, the numbers, especially based on looking at what Moses Lake is asking for in their bond for a 1,500 student school.
The price.
Price, yes.
So the $5 million, that is the price of a new sports complex? Or
That was
the
just
estimate?
Okay, so you could do as much or as little on that, right? You could do just a field, or you could do a field with the bleacher, with locker rooms. It just depends. I picked the 5 million really because of the dollar amount it would be to the taxpayer.
Okay.
And then you would look at it and say, what can we do for $5
That
million?
budget that they gave us in like January, February, that Gina gave us was like 3.6.
I just pulled it up, but I think that would have, the 5 million, because I was kind of wondering, I was thinking that's where you came up with, more from the tax dollar backed into it. But we would have a lot of infrastructure type things in addition to the complex, if we're just building on virgin soil, a complex, because there's not parking, there's not even the water, sewer, all that would, and any kind of road upgrades we'd have to have. So 5 million may or may not be enough to do what we want to do, but I understand what you're saying as far as what can
Well,
we
I think
do for
when
that
we
amount.
talked about Wahidas, you would even throw on the number 6 million if you were to do it on a standalone site.
Yeah, that was probably taking into consideration Cemetery Road. all the work we'd have to do on both sides. So that was part of, yeah.
Which realistically, we're gonna be looking at the same thing on, potentially on 14th and or 7th and or Lee, because there's no curb and gutter on those, right?
Right.
So this is really just a rough idea, and I don't know if, Gina, if you looked at it and said, okay, you're missing a lot of things here, or if it was,
Well, I didn't spend a whole lot of time looking. I understood what you're saying. I think the window for a February levy is closed because we'd have to have a resolution Monday. And we haven't, and you pointed out in here the biggest con on even a February, it's just been no conversation, no communication to the public, that this is a consideration. But in April, we have a little bit of time if we were going to go for an April one. I have other comments, but I don't know if this is the time to say them.
I can't think of a better time.
So, well, I just think that with the forward movement that we're going to take in January with recalibrating to a very different degree our finance or our facility committee and our thinking. We have last year's work, but with the vision, instructional vision, and early literacy through just the different thinking in our instructional delivery and project-based learning and a traditional high school, it still may come out that that's what the community wants, but we're going to have some very different thinking starting in January and research on that. And so if we're doing that with some potential early literacy, we may need funding there. I guess I'm just trying to wrap my brain around the importance of this early now. I do understand the whole concept of training the taxpayer of maybe an additional $2 per thousand. I'm going to stop there because I'm also going to go back to the M&O discussion we had on November 9th. And there was somebody in the group, I don't remember who, but there was a difficulty in an additional 15 or 20 cents per thousand with an MO levy at the starting point. We discussed the $400,000 levy. There was some heartburn or angst on our taxpayers not going for that and that was instructional support. So I just can't.
That was me that said that, and my only comment was you better be able to tell me what it's for.
Mhm.
I can sell it if you tell me what it's for, but to say we're gonna get 400,000, we don't even know what we're gonna spend it on. That's different than this in my mind. To go to the public and say we want to build fields is different than
Right.
than
But
we just want to add 400,000 to the coffers, and I can't tell them what it's for.
So but I guess my thinking is that I understand what you're saying. I think it's going to be hard to sell a $5 million sports complex because I think a lot of people are going to say, how does that support the instructional vision? Do we need it? We really don't need it. We want it down, it'd be a great thing. But I really think that's going to be that's where our focus has been. That's where we've been really communicating to our constituents inside the district and even outside the district is that
So why are we
instructional.
even talking about turf then?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Why the difference between that and putting turf at the high school right now?
If we
I
don't need
didn't bring
turf.
in turf. When I brought turf, you mean just grass?
Well, I mean, if we're going to the philosophy that we're only going to do what we need, then we didn't even need the turf guy to show up because we're just going to do whatever's the cheapest to do today. And
I didn't
just go
ask
from there.
yeah, I understand that. When I brought the turf versus grass on the 9th, it was my understanding of when I bring stuff to the board is to bring them options. I was trying to bring the pricing on both. So I didn't show up with one and then be asked, what would it cost us to put a turf field in? So it wasn't to propose turf over grass. It was to bring options and pricing. I think before our board meeting or board workshop even started, it was pretty obvious I didn't even know we had a turf person coming. So I think that probably spurred out of there was a athletic director meeting in Tri-Cities today. Don probably just mentioned, I don't know, that there was a discussion. So, and this has nothing to do with the personal preference. I believe as fiscally that I think it would be a hard sell.
My personal feelings, if it doesn't pass, we're in the same boat we are now. And that does kind of get their feelers out too for, I mean, people say, no way, I wouldn't support that. Okay, we heard the public, they won't support it. So it's not
But
because
then
it's
what are
a,
we gonna do? But don't we still need to do something to the existing field?
this is separate from the
To me,
existing
it's
field. I
separate
didn't
as well.
Something else.
feel like, I didn't feel like it was one or the other.
Like on the existing one, I was.
So really, the decision doesn't need to be made tonight because we can't get it onto the levy
To
per
February.
se in February anyway.
No, but it does need to be made. If we actually want it in April, we've got to go now.
Yeah.
You can't
We
wait
need to
till
start- we need to
February
start-
and then think about it.
We need to start educating now.
So we do need to make a decision.
So the money, no matter when you pass this, if this was to be passed anytime in 2017, you don't start collecting the money until the 2018
Right.
Tax
And you want
dollars
to front
anyway.
fund it, isn't that
But in
why-
this idea, it would be nice if we could front fund it before we collect all the taxes, but that still wouldn't even happen until like spring of 2019. So it really wouldn't matter. I will say that the information I got at WASDA was that capital project levies and M&O levies together do very well in February. I don't know if they said February, but usually M&Os are in February. But they have a high pass rate. So that was part of why I wanted to get this information out quickly, because I heard that last year at WASDA and I heard it again this year. Things I went to.
My feeling is I actually like this idea, but if we're gonna say let's do it in the fall, then I don't like it. Because it pushes the bond out that much farther. And I don't want to push the bond out another 2 years. Because you gotta wait till this is levy's done before you can pass it.
Right, but it doesn't matter, Tony. As long as it passes in 2017, you correct me if I'm
You're
wrong. It's gonna start collecting tax in 2018, so it'll be 18, 19. You'd run another bond in 19, which wouldn't start collecting until 2020. So
Yeah,
as long as it's done in 2017, then the bond could be run anytime, but it could be run in
My concern is
2019.
though, is it'll still stall that other committee because you're trying to sell this in the fall instead of selling the bond, and you can't sell both at the same time.
But
What do you
we
mean by
push off the
sell?
bond a year, that's what we do.
But we've been saying that it takes 2 years prep to get a bond done.
What do you mean by sell? Do you mean the actual market sale or?
Sell to the community.
So-
The last I remember in February is the record, or in June, the recommendation is it takes 18 months to 2 years to do the community outreach to be able to do a bond.
Right, but
I was saying, let's get the bond done in February of this coming year, 17, and got pushback saying the earliest we could do it was a year later.
so,
Because we've got to get the community sold on it. My concern is if you spend 6 months selling this, then we're gonna ramp up the bond committee all over again in the fall and start over again for the third time.
Yeah, I see where you come from there.
I don't want it to be 2030 and we still don't have a high school because we're still sitting around thinking about it.
and we are postured, the work we did last year wasn't in vain. I mean, we're starting in January. We can be ready for a February bond.
Yeah, my problem with that is every time we start over, we have a new committee. When you start in January, I guarantee you, there's gonna be 2 or 3 people at most that came to the last one, and we're starting over again.
I actually think it will be very different because I've never had the engagement of the superintendent, and Chris has got, I think, a lot different energy. No, I think he's got a lot of different energy and a lot different way of getting people to get together and get on the train. And so I don't know if we'll have 600 there in January, but I'm excited to have to see. And I agree, it's
But
hard
My point
to.
is how could you say that work's not wasted if there was 18 people there and there's gonna be 2 of those 18 here starting over again in January? How do you say that?
Because we're going to make sure
That's
all
continuing.
people that were involved in that are come in January.
I'll be impressed if you get as many people, if you get the same people that aren't frustrated now because it's been 6 months and they want to show up. I'll be impressed.
And I'm concerned the same way that, in I wasn't at that June board meeting, but I remember listening to the recording. That's why I don't understand why I couldn't find it again. But, and, the request being like, we need more time to educate. And now it's going to be 7 months later before we even have a discussion again with the public. that concerns me. The numbers I see of 30, this is a 30-month process, 12 months of planning, 12 months of educating the public. We're going to have 12 months to do all of it. No, and then 4 months to plan the resolution. So we'll have less than that. So that's where I am concerned. I do feel like, this is kind of off subject of this, that it just keeps getting pushed. And I'm looking historically, I think that's the way it's always gone, right? Things just keep getting pushed off. And I get that we're busy, but sometimes, I don't know. The selling point was we should wait a year because of this. We need to be on top of it, and then we haven't been. That's right.
Well, the selling point, and I'd have to go back and listen to Gene too, but it wasn't that we would start back. We're starting back up exactly when I said we were going to, that we were going to put it off, get our new superintendent on board, and that with the M&L, we'd start back up in January with the intent of going out for February 2018 bond. That makes it about an 18-month process with, yes, there's a break in there. But the other difference is when we hit the ground running in January, is we don't let up in June, because that's been a philosophy in the past. It's a philosophy in a lot of school districts in the state of Washington, is when June hits, we don't do anything in the summer. Well, if we have a different mindset and say, no, let's keep the momentum going in June and not wait and start over in September, then, we've got a lot more selling months.
I was never for stopping in the summertime. That never came from me. I know that.
No, I'm just saying that's typically what happens in school districts, though.
Well, that's what was said this year in June. When we were having the meetings this last spring, those words came up, that we would stop in the summertime. I remember that being said.
The whole process was put on hold, though.
I'm talking before that June board meeting. I want progress, right? I want us to think outside the box about what we can do that's best for all aspects of what our kids are doing. And so this idea came from several thoughts, and I'll reiterate. One of them is my fear that our debt capacity is not going to support what we want and what our kids need academically with the new high school. This would separate it out being a levy. It would not eat into the debt capacity.
That fear comes from Moses Lake, because the numbers we were looking at was 78 million. Moses Lake's 111. And they're building a 1,500 person high school.
And no athletic complex in that.
I wonder if they had any state match.
We're just talking about total cost of the project. Our total cost
Our
was
total
around
cost
80
is
something.
79 million. The concern is that, okay, if we get the bid back, it ends up being 115 million.
Can't do
at
it.
the end of it, because we don't have the debt capacity.
And I know 5 million is kind of seems like a drop in a bucket, but everything helps.
And that's the reason I think I like this idea, to get the feelers out to the community, and know that I understand what Tony is saying about. Then that means extending the bond later, but I really like the idea of going to the community and seeing what it is that they want. And it'll give us.
I like it too. I'm just saying that I like the idea of let's get on it, let's get going.
Yeah.
Let's not. I mean, let's shoot for April if we're going to do it and get it going.
And I agree.
And I think it's important that part of the education to our community is that the reason for doing this is because if our long-term goal academically is a new high school, this is going to help that be able to happen. Because originally this was part of that, and would increase the cost. Now, maybe that 5 million could go toward something else that's important to the community, or we just say, well, that 5 million is because costs are going to be higher than we thought.
Well, I guess from my view is if we were serious about this, I still think you'd go back to somebody like Dale and go find out if there's still possibilities to get things donated and all those things.
If we're going to do what?
No, for the sports complex. If you can get, it's still the same number. If you can go get somebody to donate the gravel, it's still going to be that much cheaper.
Right.
And if you put turf in the sports complex over there, and that gives you more money to do the roads or whatever else you have to do.
Right. The thing is, I think if you pass this, the community's gonna think that this is paying for it. That, why are you out soliciting donations when you just passed a $5 million levy to pay for it?
Part of it might be first you gotta really get some, I just have to say this, much as I've liked working with Architect West and everyone we worked with so far. I'm having some trust issues when these big numbers come out and then we find out we can do it for a lot cheaper. But that being said, once we find out what the cost would be to build a standalone facility, what if it comes out to 6 million and then it's like, okay,
Just to
we're raising
clarify,
five.
I'm not saying Stuart go out and try to nickel and dime people trying to raise money. I'm saying you go back to the three big players who said they would donate substantial things and ask them if they still will.
Those three big players still wasn't enough. So we're still gonna
There
have to
was-
solicit some,
We're
There
still
was-
gonna have to pass a bond.
right?
But
But
there
I'm
was
saying-
I don't know how many people, there was a dozen or more that were donating.
Yeah, but I mean, that's different than going around and saying we're gonna go get a GoFundMe account to raise $450,000 to buy
Bad
the
idea.
turf.
So how much time do we lose, Rob, or Gina? I don't know if you can answer. If we put this out for an April and it doesn't pass, we find out the community, this isn't what they want. What does it do to the bond? It can be, we could still do it by
Well, I
February of 18.
I mean, I think it all comes down to education and consistency. I mean, if we even running this in April, we gotta start talking about it on the heels of a M&O. I don't think you, at this point, talk about it while you do an M&O.
Why not? They're two different things.
Well, I mean, I'm open to whatever, but I just think if we're talking about facility steering committee, that's going to drive a facility plan for a bond, whether it's a year down the road, and an M&O and a capital levy. Everybody in this room will get it, and there's probably 100 people. There's people in our community that are going to get it, but there's other people. There's so many things going on with big dollar signs attached to it. It's just we just need to
I
be
guess-
diligent on the communication
My
and
personal view is people get sports. The stuff you have to sell is the instructional stuff. Why we need a high school to instruct kids, I think that's where you have to sell. My personal opinion, Othello, I don't see us saying we need to put in a new sports complex and the mayor's gonna be all over it. The city's gonna be all over it because that's what they want. I just don't see any. I think everybody's would be. I'm probably pie in the sky, but I think when you're talking about an athletic complex, it's sorely needed in this area. And it's been stumped already by the city for a long time. It's not like it hasn't been talked about.
Yeah, it's definitely been talked about.
so I don't know that I answered your question, Mike. Would you state it?
Basically, if we did this and it didn't pass in April, is that setting us back 4 months, 6 months, 5 months, whatever
Well, I
it
think
is?
if it isn't passed, we recalibrate and decide what's most important, because the next viable time to run, most successful time to run a bond or levy would be the following February. So, I think we just
And
make
we're
a
on track.
decision.
If the idea hadn't come up, we weren't going to run it till February of 18, the bond anyway.
My personal feeling is the facility committee meets and has their discussions regardless.
Instructional vision.
It's based on a new high school, if that's where they still want to go. This would basically be pulling that out of that plan and saying, hey, we're going to see if we can get the community to support a levy that would approve this portion of that. Keep going with that, then based on the results of this, then we keep pushing and we go for that February 18 if it fails, or it passed. So now we have more time, another year of educating our community and more planning for February 19.
Yeah, I see it as
Well,
all
that's what it looks
standalone. I guess I don't even see it as really being connected. A sports facility out there, if you end up having a pre-K tech, then it doesn't matter what you build out there. We own 80 acres. If it's
That's
not-
how
if it's
I'm
not
seeing
I know, but I'm saying I don't see the sports part of it, in my mind, has really nothing to do with what the facilities.
It's really just training people's pocketbook.
They're not gonna
is
be
really
talking
what it's
about-
doing.
I thought he was
Football.
asking, how does it affect the bond? And I was saying, if it passes, the bond would go an extra year. If it doesn't, I say you still push for a bond in 2018.
So
Yeah,
I
what
don't
I heard
think-
you say, just the part of a larger plan, and I guess I'm just saying that the sports deal doesn't have to be part of a larger plan, except for that we need more sports facilities.
Just the taxpayer dollars though for 2 years.
Correct.
That's
You
why
gotta
you
pay
put
for
off
it.
the bond.
So if we run this in April and it passes, we don't have to, we can still run a bond in 2018. You can run a bond and pass
Push
it, you
off
don't
the,
have
dollar
to sell.
amount. Oh,
Yeah,
gotcha.
so we can, if we've got the momentum, we've got a successful M&O, we have a successful capital levy, then we educate, we continue, you're right,
You
that,
can-
so we've got three
You
veins
can
going
preview
on.
the bond.
So that
You can
was my.
still work
I
that
forgot about
through,
you wait to
and then,
sell.
and get voter approval, because you can even get voter approval up to if it's $100 million ticket item, if that's the decision, we go for the voter approval, but you can only sell what debt capacity you have available to sell. So if the projects are, if that ends up being the magic number,
Well, I don't want to get stuck into, we can't do phase 3 because. we don't
I
have
was
that
just,
capacity.
but I was just capitalizing that's an
Yeah.
option as well.
I
So
agree.
it doesn't have to put off the bond.
So what I need is some direction from the board as to what route to take, and then bring it to our next board meeting if there is a necessity to rush or to get something done. Or putting something on our packet so that we can approve or not. Is that something that needs to happen at our next board
Next
meeting?
board meeting, it sounds like we don't have time to do that now.
Okay,
Not by next Monday.
okay, so we're looking to the April, right?
I think that would be the earliest possible, right?
So what is the board?
February?
But we need to have discussions of, I guess I'll ask the board. I think we need to have discussions about what a sports complex means and what it really costs. And I mean, the 5 million is a nice number, but we need to do some homework and figure out exactly what we're going to tell the community we're going to be able to get.
Who do we get to do that?
Well, I mean, you go to, I know we don't like getting these high bids, but I don't think you have any other choice but to go to Architects West and have them look at that 88 acres and say, where would you put the sports complex? What would it look like? You know what I mean?
Include the cost of all the upgrades?
Everything could be put in as options, whatever they call it.
Mhm.
Doesn't have to go to bid. They can give you whatever they've done in the
Right.
past, right?
Right.
But they
But
can give
we're
you
gonna
kind of
have
a
to have
layout of where
something-
it should be.
Right, at some point,
Well,
we're
I
gonna
have
have something to
ideas.
present to the community.
Mhm.
This is our idea of a sports complex.
Do we need to make a statement to maybe the Architects West that we need to tone down, we don't have to get so fancy with things?
Architects West usually does things a lot leaner than most other architects. That aches you, dude.
Maybe want a bigger diet?
So is that the direction that the board wants to go, is maybe have an outfit like Architects West give us a
Ballpark at least.
ballpark number?
Does the rest of the board support this idea? If they don't, I don't think-
I got the gist that we do. Am I wrong?
Nope.
Okay. So
Good job, Ron.
in lieu of that, is that the direction we want to go, is have an outfit come and give us a number?
Well, yeah, we need to do this fairly quickly so we can educate ourselves, so we can educate the public.
How quickly is fairly quickly?
Well, by
Gotta
January,
ask
we
them,
better
right?
start having
Some numbers?
some numbers, and,
They said they're swamped right now.
yeah, they are.
we better ask them right away so that in case they see we're not. gonna
Because
meet
if this
numbers in
is
February.
April, when do we have to have
I'm looking-
maybe you better give us a little bit of a timeline.
Those are the
Resolution's
dates,
gonna
'cause
have
I
to be
know
February,
we
or,
have to
yeah,
file
February.
I can't get them on right now, but to file, the resolution has to be filed pretty quick in February after our
M&L.
election date, because that's why we run a February M&L, because if it doesn't pass, we want to be able to turn it around and get it on the April. So I want to say it's probably around February 20th that we have to have our resolution recorded with the county.
So what, I guess I'm gonna ask a generic question to everybody. The bond committee is that group. If we want to pursue this, even if it ends up being in the fall, I guess, what's the detriment of getting the coaches and the players in the sports community involved with us now to talk about it?
Well, I think we need to get Dell.
Well, him for sure, but there's baseball people and.
Well, yeah, but let
There's
him,
more than just
let
him.
him, don't let him spearhead that, not us. I mean, it's like, bring Dale in. Dale, this is what we're thinking. What do you think? Who do you think we need to bring in? Let him. He's gonna say the same thing, Tony. He's gonna say, well, we need to get the coaches involved. We need to, yeah, great idea, Dale. Run with it.
So one other thought, if it didn't pass in April, it could run next February alongside of a capital bond and still put off the, so that's another,
Option.
I personally like the idea of keeping them on separate tracks and keeping the facilities committee on the instructional stuff. And then we'll go get some sports people involved in this sports deal. Because they're different people.
You know, different, totally separate ideas.
You know, I can reach out to Dale,
Okay, so who,
but I was looking for somebody into baseball.
I
I
think
know he's
Dale's,
the
I think
football
Dale's a great person to lead that.
so Gina, would you then call Architects West to see what their availability is and how soon they could get us some numbers? And then just let us know.
for,
whether-
I would need a little bit more on what the sports complex is gonna include.
Well, maybe we need to have Ed come to a board meeting and then talk about what a sports complex means to him and then we can fine tune it.
If I was throwing out a generic one, I'd say let's drive over to Connell. I really think theirs is awesome.
Royal City.
Royal City's doing everything on the turf, but they just left up the one. I'd rather see a soccer
The whole
field, baseball
complex, yeah.
field, soccer. or
Separate,
tennis.
you're looking at separate fields? Okay,
Yeah, sports.
that's fine.
That's right. So this potentially, I'm glad that was brought up, could affect our vision for tennis as well.
Correct.
Because if
Absolutely.
we're looking at building a certain amount of courts sooner than we planned, do we still want to do 6 at Parrot High School? Or would we decrease that
To
to
4.
4 maybe? I don't know, because I'm assuming the city's going forward with Kiwanis, Gina?
Well, we're in discussions about it. They won't do anything till spring. It depends if we're gonna.
Well, I think that they needed to put it in their budget or something is what Terry told me.
I talked to Terry about it. I need to follow up with him because I'd asked him for some documentation from their finance, so I'll follow up with him. But I know there's pretty much a verbal from what he shared
Okay,
with you.
so we need to adjourn, so Gina will get a hold of Architects West and give us some information regarding some numbers. Is there anything else that we need to get done prior to another
Did you
meeting?
get your answer on what a sports complex? You heard what I think a sports complex is.
Yeah.
As far as to ask Architects West.
See, I
You
wasn't
said, yeah, I
thinking
heard you
soccer
say
field. I was
drive
thinking
over to
maybe the High
Connell.
school football field is the new soccer field.
Well, it'll be a middle school field at some point.
Right. Still be soccer field.
So everybody, football field, track, soccer fields.
That's just my thought. It's
Baseball.
not Stewart's.
So kind of the sports complex as if it would be when the high school's there.
So if the new field would have turf, would that negate the need for a separate soccer field?
Maybe.
And the thing is, you want your soccer field to be able to play on.
Keep in
Artificial
mind, we're all
turf.
talking about having 2 fields, so we're having
The
to have
soccer kids
practice
actually
field.
would prefer not to have.
Yeah, but
artificial turf.
the problem is when they go to state, they play on turf and it's totally different than playing on grass.
Are the football players don't care? They practice all week on grass.
No, the football players, but the soccer makes a huge
I
difference.
think basketball's one of the
Yeah, well, I mean, because you're talking about a separate practice football field or separate practice soccer field too, so
Right.
it could mean a lot of different things to
Right.
different people.
That's why I'm thinking one field, not 2, not at this point.
So you have kind of an idea.
One field, no track,
Yes, track,
one field track, bleachers, both
Yeah.
sides.
Parking lot.
parking,
a little bit
bathrooms.
of our visitors. like one
An
section.
entry with locker rooms and.
Well, I'll talk to Ed and then I'll probably ask him to
Concession
put together
You
a
for
a
sure have
drawing,
for the
a drawing, just
football field,
a
baseball field,
visual, and then we can go
tennis
from there.
courts.
Perfect.
Anything else that you guys want to see?
Probably.
Softball.
Get that.
Baseball different than softball field.
Yes.
You want to rethink your 5 million?
I just threw it out there. I'm not married to that 5 million.
Anything else the board wants to see prior to
Okay,
So here's a question for Gina, that, we had a pretty good idea of what that complex was when we were planning for the high school before, right? So why would it be much different than that?
I'm gonna have to go look at what was all included in that.
The-
And I don't think it had like any of the,
Any of the bleachers or
infrastructure.
anything?
I
No,
think
it
it
had
did.
new-
No, it did.
Yeah, it had a
It was a
whole
complete,
complex.
Phase 3 out of
and
complex.
it had,
Yeah.
I don't know how many softball and baseball
It was
fields.
3.6, 3.8 million, something like that. That's all.
So maybe just start with keeping it at that, and then we look at that. That's a starting point anyway.
Email that to us if you find it, or when you find it.
I want to make sure you have clear directions, before we adjourn.
I believe I do.
Okay,
Because what we come back with from Ed, we can add to or take away.
right.
And this won't be for the Monday board meeting.
No,
And our next one's a really short one.
it is. So, I mean, if you have something by that one time, that's
Doesn't
fine.
have to
We can
be.
look at it.
Well, we can make it longer.
Yeah, we
I'd
don't have to
be,
keep it
I'd
short.
be personally concerned about waiting until January if we're gonna do something in April.
It's just gonna be a matter of whether they've got time in their
Yeah,
hopper. And
That's the big
I've
issue.
not gotten anything
Yeah.
back on the tennis building, and he's had that for a month. I asked him today.
Okay.
So,
Great. Anything else, gentlemen? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Director Mike Garza to adjourn meeting. Second,
Second.
by Director Simmons. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
I'll have to
Thank you.
read
Over
the-
a few minutes.
read in the refrigerator.
Dignitary list, we probably want to check with,